All right, today we're going to be presenting on the Aristotelian model founded by Mark Widmer and Gary Ellis. I'm Ben Hatch, and this is Hannah Mayle.
All right, so the definition we came up according to this model for therapeutic recreation was that the model can be defined as a service or process that is designed to help rehabilitate individuals while improving their level of happiness, individual freedom, and responsibility by using our intervention and recreation to allow them to optimally enjoy their leisure time and activities.
This is a quote from Aristotle, who basically his theory and ideas of happiness, this model kind of is based upon. But his quote says, "Happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and end of human existence."
So this is an idea that Aristotle came up with about the good life, is that using your signature strengths to obtain authentic happiness and abundant gratification in work, love, parenting, and finding purpose. And I think as recreational therapists, it's our job to plan and facilitate these activities to help these individuals to gain and strengthen the strengths that they do have in order for them to achieve their happiness and by using this model. The two conditions of the good life that Aristotle came up with was the access to sufficient wealth, and Aristotle defined like the highest level of wealth as being leisure. And the second one was the person has to have good ethics, so just knowing between right and wrong, and they develop this by their habits.
Here's another quote from Aristotle, his eudaimonia, which means the good life, and that's basically happiness, well-being, and the involvement of goods.
So some goals that are included in this model is to help the client to attain this happiness, or what we've described as the good life, which promotes individual freedom and responsibility. And then we want to help empower the client to overcome constraints, which can include illness, disability, oppression, wrong desires, or even the lack of focus on apparent goods. And we want the outcome to have inheriting and understanding, as well as strengthening the client's leisure, learning, and relationships.
So now we're going to talk about 4 elements and attributes of this model. The first is afflictions and oppression. So basically these are the physiological, psychological, behavioral challenges or disabilities that are interfering with the individual's ability to have freedom. And then the second is talking about goods. So there's kind of like there's 3 levels of goods. Mainly the primary goods are kind of the most necessary for just basic living, the biological, safety, mobility, and function skills. So those are the ones necessary to survive. And then the secondary goods build upon that from learning and creating meaningful relationships. One of the articles talked about money and how money can be an example of a tool to help increase secondary goods as far as providing more opportunities for learning, as far as being able to go to school or read books, or meaningful relationships, as far as being able to maybe go out to eat with some friends or have vacations as a family as a way to build those relationships. And the third level once you have the primary and secondary goods, builds towards the summum bonum, which is kind of optimal leisure and the kind of optimal and highest intellectual virtues. And then the third is freedom and responsibility. So as they overcome those biological and physiological, psychological things that are limiting them, they will increase in their freedom to enjoy leisure and to feel more happiness through goods, and also have an increased responsibility to do that themselves and to be proactive about it themselves. And then finally, the role of the TR specialist begins as more of a therapist, helping them to overcome the primary, to achieve the primary goals. And then being an educator for teaching them how to participate in leisure and to increase their freedom and responsibility themselves. Then as a facilitator, helping them to do what they've educated the participant to do. And then finally being a resource and an advocate for the individual to further their goods, further their leisure enhancement, and things like that. So here's a diagram about this model. The top left has a box discussing things that need to be overcome by the TR interventions. And then as you can see, the primary, secondary goods approaching summum bonum, which again is the highest level of both kind of education and the combination of having enough goods and the right types of goods, as well as freedom and responsibility. And you can see each of those levels underneath. And then it just shows the responsibilities of therapeutic recreation specialists.
So this model can really be used for a wide variety of individuals, but we thought that adolescents and young and older adults can benefit from this because they need to have a high level of cognitive functioning to benefit from this model. And Ben's going to give us an example of this.
So this is an example from one of the articles in the readings that we had. And it talked about a woman who was married. She enjoyed several outdoor activities. I think skiing and some water sports were mentioned. But then she got in a wreck, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. And that kind of created a cycle of depression and not being able to feel like she can enjoy the leisure activities she used to because of her limitations. Also, it affected how she felt about her relationships with friends and family. But once this model became more implemented and then recreational therapists helped use this model, she was able to kind of turn around her life and kind of break out of the depression by seeing that there are still opportunities for her to participate in the sports that she used to enjoy, or maybe similar sports that would help her feel like she was enjoying the sports and leisure activities that she used to. Also, she was able to enjoy and realize that her relationships with family and friends weren't really broken because of her sudden disability, but that there was still a lot of high quality relationships in her life. Some of the strengths of this model are that it's pretty flexible. It's grounded on philosophical theory of happiness, which comes from Aristotle. And it's helpful in defining goals and appropriate leisure lifestyles for individuals. It can be used for a variety of clients, and it brings social conscience to our understanding of leisure. However, some of the weaknesses are that this thinking came from the Greeks, who previously used to find leisure as slaves, or find leisure from slaves. It's hard to use for programming. There's a fair amount of ethics involved as far as like what are proper goods and what are unnecessary goods and finding those. And it may not be appropriate for all populations. So yeah, those are our sources. Hope that was easy to understand, and thanks for listening.